So, SMILEGATE kind of just hit us with one of the worst balance patches they've ever had. So these are the balance adjustment previews for the 18th of January update. We saw that before with the leaks, or not leaks, but they announced that Judge Kise, Specimen Sez, Eye Celine were running on the current banners, and we kind of thought that it was to make more money before the new ML comes out. They're going to buff them, are getting buffed, or we're going to look and see that they're actually getting changed. We also have Hwayoung and Elena, units that Elena's honestly like pretty okay, I'd say right now, but Hwayoung isn't really that great, so she's getting buffed, which was a good thing, so we thought. And then we have Command Model Laika, who is kind of usable, also getting buffed. And if you look at the Moonlight 4 stars, we have Auxiliary Lots and Infinite Horizon Acades. And for the 4-star Covenant Roman and 3-star, we have Montmorency and some artifacts getting buffed, quote unquote buffed as well. So you're going to see from these changes, it's very disappointing. A lot of these aren't even really buffs, and they don't really actually change the unit. We're going to talk about why. So first thing that's getting changed is Judge Kise. So her S1 is having her S1 get changed from having a defense break into penetrating defense. Sure, that's always nice. Defense breaks are honestly more impactful if you actually land it. Penetrate defense is okay just for that turn, but defense breaks are way more effective. But okay, sure, we'll say it's a buff because maybe you'll bring it with a defense break unit. Next, you'll see your S2 has a defense break now. You can see it's an AoE attack that will strip all buffs with a 100% chance to make them unable to counterattack for 2 turns and a chance to decrease defense for 2 turns. You can soul burn this for an extra turn, and then use your S3, which is an AoE attack that will actually increase skill cooldowns by 1 turn. So honestly, this seems pretty meh because of the fact that it doesn't address her biggest problem. And that was actually that she's too slow to open. With this setup, you want her to be an opener, right? You want an S2, open, and then S3. And yeah, I guess this will work for slower teams. But in World Arena, you can't ever pick her still because she gets outsped by pretty much everything. And honestly, why would you pick her over something like a Astromancer Elena, who can actually, cycle that unable to counterattack a lot more, and you actually don't have to rely on landing this unable to be a counterattack. This can get 15% in, this can get resisted, right? So you're going to have to build her still super fast and high effectiveness and give up damage, or super fast and high damage and give up effectiveness. And even then you can get 15% in. So Judge Kise will still not really be used in Cleave because you don't really use units that are risky in arena offense because you lose a lot more points than you gain once you get to the higher ranks. And yeah, her S2 is way too inconsistent, so this change is pretty much a wash. They're even changing her imprint concentration to effectiveness, so they're kind of changing her entire identity to kind of like an opener, but it's going to be very unreliable still because she doesn't have ignore effect resist, and also because yeah, like I said, she can get resisted. So honestly, I don't even think this is a buff. I think it's like a side grade, so I don't know what they're thinking. Next, we have Specimen Sez getting changed. The only thing they changed is now, with his S3 as a passive, when his S3 was available, when an ally, except for Specimen Sez, is attacked, he had a 20% chance to counterattack. Now it's evasion. I'm not really sure this is going to really change anything, just because now you can still focus him down with ignore evasion units. How many ignore evasion units do we have? We have Sleep now that destroys evasion. We have Zahhak, we have the very meta Zahhak and Briar Witch Asaria, who will absolutely destroy him now. And honestly, it makes him worse against them because before, at least he could counterattack and stun them and ruin your game. Now he just dies. And yeah, I'm not too sure what they're kind of going for. And even if he evades, he actually can't really counter now, right? So unless you put him on counter set now, which is definitely required with this change, you're not going to really be able to counterattack and do anything even after you evade. So very, very interesting. Don't really think this will make him playable. I think they had to actually give him a lot more stats in his passives or something, but this doesn't really do anything at all. So yeah, 2 buffs, quote unquote buffs that really didn't do anything. And then we have Spirit Eye Celine getting changed here. So they're changing her S1. First off, it's actually going to penetrate more defense but do less damage. So I guess what this means is it'll do more damage versus tanks with high defense, like Karina, defense scaling tanks, but it'll do less damage to squish units, which doesn't really make sense too much. She seemed like she was fine already. She's not really used to counter tanks, and we'll talk about why. Also, you'll see that her possession will give her attack buff, so maybe this will, or not attack buff, but increase attack. So you can still give her attack buff, right? But yeah, it doesn't really change too much, I'd say. I think what they're trying to go for is less damage on squishy units and more damage against tankier units. And what I think this will be is kind of like a useless change, because if you think about it, units that have high defense, right, namely like the rocket punch abusers or like just knights in general, don't really crit that much. So it's not gonna really matter, because you're not gonna be counterattacking anyways when they attack you. So it doesn't really make sense. Her kit is designed to punish units that crit you and that don't have like extra attacks, right? But this kind of just goes away from that, because why would a tank with high defense attack you and crit? It's very unlikely, and you're banking on like 15%. So yeah, I think it's a terrible change. I think she was perfectly fine the way she was. I just released a video on her in Guild Wars, and she seemed pretty strong, honestly. I don't know why they changed her. Why not buff like different ML 5 stars, right? Like Judge Kise and Specimen Sez, don't get me wrong, they need a buff, but these buffs are pretty shitty. And we still have Blood Moon Haste needing a buff on Cecilia, Arbiter Villagers, so many units were well, and they're just not touching them. Instead, they're wasting resources to side grade or even nerf Spirit Eye Celine, who's already perfectly fine, just to make money on their banners. So not too sure. But yeah, let's actually talk about the Covenant 5 stars now. So Hwayoung, her S1's getting changed, so she doesn't need to be buffed anymore to actually inflict extra damage. Now you just need to attack, and you can actually see the soul burn is moved from her S3 to her S1 to do extra damage. So okay, extra damage on her S1. Next, you're going to see her S2 is not giving her passive attack anymore, but you can see at the start of your turn, when you actually don't have a debuff, you'll increase attack for 1 turn. And she also does not have a barrier anymore, so attack buff will actually give you, I think, 50% attack, so you're getting 20% more attack now than before, kind of like the old Hwayoung. But you lost that barrier every turn, which was very important for Hwayoung to survive, so not really too sure what that is about. You're also going to see your S3 is changed. Now you'll get that barrier on your S3 for 2 turns. You're also going to see that the cooldown is reduced to 3 turns as well. And also, you're going to see damage dealt is decreased. So yeah, the main purpose you used Hwayoung was to one-shot people with your S3. And now she's nerfed. So yeah, you don't really actually get to do that anymore, I believe, because the damage is nerfed. I think what they're trying to go for is having her more on a bruiser build and more not one-shotty, just like tanky bruiser. But the one thing that made Hwayoung still usable is in Guild Wars offense against very tanky teams. You can one-shot a unit still and like still have her to her job. But now I don't think she'll be able to do that anymore with that damage still decreased, because currently Hwayoung requires torrent sets. She needs like so much attack, like so much damage, but you could still barely one-shot right now. And now with her damage dealt decreased on her S3, like why would you even pick her? Like there's way better units that are just bruisers out there. Like even like Fire Ravi is just gonna be way better than what Hwayoung can do overall. And Fire Ravi is not even that good right now. So it's kind of like a nerf for sure. So I'm not too sure what they're doing here. I don't think this change really matters at all. I think SMILEGATE doesn't really understand how their game works and like how Hwayoung is actually used. So I think they're trying to like, I think they saw this as like a slight buff to Hwayoung. They're too scared to overbuff her, but honestly it's a nerf. So okay, I don't really know what they're thinking about. And well, I just went to the bottom of the screen, but we're gonna keep going here. So we have Elena. So Elena actually did get buffed. One of the units finally that did get buffed. You can see that our S3 actually dispels 2 debuffs now. So why I'm saying 2 is because before you only got 1 with this exclusive equipment option 2, but now there's 1 baseline as well. So what you can actually do is debuff or dispel 2 debuffs, which is very important now because there's so many units with 2 debuffs on their S3 or whatever on their debuff skills. So now Elena is actually a very good counter against AoE debuffing units like Ran, Payra, if you actually see Payras anymore, and like those units. So I think this is a very good change. I think Elena was in an okay spot, but now she'll be definitely like strong. So I'm very glad about this change. I think this is a good buff. Definitely a good buff, SMILEGATE. Only took you like 5 units to get there, but okay. But yeah, anyways, let's go to Command Model Leica. Also actually got buffed. So you can see like the text box with very small changes are the ones with actual slight buffs. The ones with these huge changes that they're thinking that they're reworking units to be like the new coming of like, I don't know, a strong unit is just completely wrong. It ends up being like side grades or nerfs. But we have Command Model Leica. She's actually getting a 100% chance to sleep now, which is definitely required. People didn't use her because she was inconsistent. You would cap out at 85%. And you're also going to see you decrease buff durations up the target by 1 turn when using your S2 before inflicting target, so it's very nice as well. So overall, a nice solid buff. I think that she still will have some weaknesses, but definitely we'll see more play because now she's more consistent, and that's the biggest thing people want. And then next, for the Moonlight 4 stars. So the first one we have is Auxiliary Lots. And everyone hates this change, including myself, because A-Lots right now is used in PvE for Abyss and Banshee, and with this change, he is not usable anymore because his S2 cooldown is going up. I don't know why. He's not even that strong. His cooldown is now 3 turns now instead of 2 turns. You're going to see that they're trying to make him into like an effectiveness user with his S3. His S2 will now actually give effectiveness. You can soul burn it for an extra turn instead of on his S3. And his S3, that 2-turn silence, will have 2 buff dispel and also 75% chance to silence. Not even 100% chance. So kind of the same problem with the old command Monolika. It's very inconsistent. 75% is pretty inconsistent, and it's not like we've seen units with 75% chances to silence kind of fall out of meta. Like the first one is going to be ML Broman. He was very strong after the buff, but people ended up not using him that much because inconsistent. Only really used on defense teams, right? And it's kind of going to be the same with Auxiliary Lots. You're not going to really use him still. So the only area of content he was used in was Abyss and like Banshee. And with this change, you're not going to be able to use him there because the cooldown is too long for those CR readiness manipulation teams. So don't know what SMILEGATE's thinking. They think that people will use him as like an effectiveness speed unit. No, because the only thing he needs to do is go first. So you can only really get effectiveness from the ring on him. So I think the most effectiveness you'll ever get on him is like 100%. And that's not enough versus dispellers and like cleansers. So very useless change. It'll make him it's definitely a nerf for sure. You're not going to build effectiveness on him because all you need is speed. And sure, he has this effectiveness buff, but most effect resist abusers right now are like 200, 250%. So good luck trying to debuff that. So not really sure. Next ML4 star getting changed is Infinite Horizon Acades. CR push is getting bumped up by 5%. Sure, will this matter? No, does not really change anything. Doesn't change that the buffs that she can give your team go from pretty bad to very good, so there's too much RNG, so won't really change anything there. Next we have Blue Roman. So now you can see the damage dealt increase from Event Horizon is not going to be there anymore. What it's actually going to do is inflict restrict. Sure. Why would you ever pick this over Pera? I don't know. Does this change anything with him? No, he's not going to be used at all anyways, so okay, very useless change. Montmorency also getting changed here. She's getting a buff to actually have a 75% chance to put the enemy asleep for 1 turn, which is okay, I guess. Does it really change much for PvP? No. Her biggest problem in PvP is that she doesn't cycle fast enough, and also her healing is too lackluster. And you're going to see that her Solitude Rune will actually make her take 5% less damage from bosses now than it already does. So this is a good change for PvE for early game players, but the Sleep Sorcery change literally does not matter. They should have just buffed her healing on her S2 rune a little bit more, and I think it'd be way better. I don't know why they're buffing her sleep chance. I think just make her S2 heal more from that rune, and she'd be super solid, but okay, this will not change anything with her usage. She's already god tier in PvE, so even though this is a nice change, you'll still not see any change in her usage. It's not like she'll magically be used in like Banshee, or not Banshee, in like Golem or anything like that. She'll still be using the same area of content, so not really sure what this was about. They should have definitely just changed her healing because that is her biggest weakness. Not even for PvP, but for PvE. Especially in the early game, you're forced to run like 2 healers, including Montmorency, because you'll find out that her healing is not enough unless you have really good gear and specific artifacts on her. So not really sure why they didn't put that change in, but okay. Now going into artifacts. So basically they decided we're going to put crit chance on all of our artifacts and call it a day. Circus Fantasia, crit chance added. Mannequin Control, crit chance added. I guess this already had crit chance. But wait, what? Increases hit chance by 10 to 20 and critical hit chance by 15 on a single attack. So the crit chance is added to AoE attacks as well. So I guess this is for like, I don't know, Judge Kise, the recently buffed Judge Kise, I guess. Doesn't change anything. And next we have Sacred Tree Ranch. After using a basic skill, you would use to increase CR of an ally, except for the caster, with the highest attack by 10%. Now it's any attack, not going to really change too much. Now this is Sharoon's artifact, and it wasn't really used on Sharoon because Sharoon's S3 is AoE, and yeah. I think maybe it'll see a little bit more usage. It's used sometimes on Death Dealer Ray, but overall this doesn't change too much. This is a Soul Weaver artifact, and there's way too many good Soul Weaver artifacts. So yeah, these are the changes coming on the 18th of January. Pretty much I'll summarize it. Judge Kise, doesn't matter, doesn't change anything. Specimen Sez actually makes them worse in my opinion, but doesn't really matter. Spirit Eye Celine, it's a nerf in my opinion. Hwayoung, it's a nerf in my opinion. Elena, it's a good buff. Command Model Leica, good buff. Auxiliary Lots, really bad nerf. Like they're not in tune with their game. They don't know that he's used for PvE, and they nerfed him there completely. Unusable now. Infinite Horizon Kise, it's a buff, but doesn't matter. Roman, it's technically a buff, but still doesn't matter. And Montmorency, it's technically a buff, but doesn't really matter as well. And the artifact changes are all doo-doo. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below if I'm the only one who thinks this, but I really hate this patch. And if you guys want to see more patch previews like this, and you guys don't really like the changes coming, make sure you guys hit that like button, because I sure don't like what's coming with these balance patches. So I'll see you guys next video.